We have with us none other than Jason Hild, CEO, Saber, Astronautics. And joining us, we have the incredible Shreya Dhondial, Executive Editor, Times Now. Okay, we'll tone down the music. Let's make some space for applause as well, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. And let's welcome Jason Hild and Shreya Dhondial.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Is everyone settled down? Gentlemen, if anyone needs to take a seat, please do that. Sir? All right. Dr. Hild, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for flying all the way from Australia to India for the GBS. By the time this ends, you will have spent more time on a flight than actually here in India. So a double thank you to you. And you're missing Valentine's Day. No. I believe your wife is waiting for you in Australia. You won't reach on time.
I think my wife is glad I'm here for Valentine's Day, to be honest. Yeah.
Dr. Hild, again, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Hild, you've spent a large part of your career thinking about how humanity goes from visiting space to actually living there. I have a more fundamental question. My fundamental question is, who gets to go? And that is something that you've been talking about as well. But before we start, first things first. We are talking about being on the cusp of an interplanetary species. I want to ask you why we need to be an interplanetary species at all. It's not like we are running out of space here on Earth. Yep. Less than 20% of Earth right now is inhabited by humans with urban build-up, infrastructure, etc. 80% is still available to us. And most of it is habitable. Why go looking for, space in Mars or Moon?
Well, I mean, the thing is we don't need to go to space to live here on Earth. That's the truth of the matter. There's an old expression that an industrialist once said to me. He said, nobody buys what they need, they buy what they want. And the reality with space is it's a $620 billion market that's doubling in the next 5 years. 5 years before, it was a $320 billion market. So the reason why we're going to space is because there's money there. There's a gold rush there. There's value there, and we can make use of that value. And the question of whether we as people, humans, go to space or not is dependent on whether it makes sense to send people to get the commercial value out of that domain. So now the question, I'm turning around your question just a little bit, is what's the value of space, as opposed to why do we need to send people? Space today, that goes to Christmas present, as I like to call it, is space is used as a critical part of our data infrastructure. Space is the data highway for the 21st century. So what do we use it for today? We use it for evaluating the land using Earth observation imagery. We use it for telecommunications. We use it for defense and defense services. We use it for manufacturing. Advanced manufacturing is about to become the next big thing, advanced manufacturing in space. And all of that value is the reason why this is such an exciting and quickly growing economic sector.
Jeff Bezos has been talking about shifting heavy industries from here on Earth, possibility to Mars. You have someone like an Elon Musk who's talking about, self-sustaining cities there, etc. I want to ask you, you're telling us that, and there are a lot of people, who have a background in business here, you're telling us that there is a gold rush in space. We are going to space because that is where the money is. How? Help us understand that. You're talking about an industry, you're talking about a space industry. Right now, all I see is, I see planets where you don't even have air to breathe, you don't have place to stay, you don't have food to eat, you have no traffic management, you have almost nothing there. And you're saying there's a gold rush there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the gold rush has been close to Earth for a long time, and people have been making a lot of money on it and spending a lot of money on it. For example, Johnson & Johnson is spending hundreds of millions of dollars in drug development on the International Space Station. A lot of people don't realize that, because the environment in space, you can have perfect crystallization, you can make perfect products. You can make silicon chips which are 10 to 100 times faster than anything we can make here on Earth. So the value is there. The money being made today is being made in sending satellites up, not sending people. Sending this material. We got trillions of dollars worth of material already that we as people, as companies, as governments have sent up. So now you've got this very interesting interplay between the commercial value of space versus the government value of space. And it used to be, even 15 years ago, seen as primarily a business to government sector. Okay? But what changed was companies got innovative and decided to find ways to make satellites that were smaller. And it was the miniaturization of space, not the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos that got this whole thing started. For context, a government satellite would be about the size of a school bus, while the smallest commercial satellite where you could make money from and value from, taking pictures of the Earth or doing Internet of Things and kind of being a part of that data chain, it's roughly the size of a toaster. You know what I mean? So once it got to that size, it became VC investable. It became bootstrappable. It became startupable. So you had this massive movement of startups which have matured over the years to now you've got scale-ups and et cetera, et cetera. But to your point, what's needed, what's really happening is that value has grown so fast, faster than the infrastructure we have to manage it. So, like our company is focused on space traffic management because we see 15,000 spacecraft in orbit today, 15,000 spacecraft. And it's kind of like what air traffic control was in 1922. A lot of barnstorming out there. And because you have civil requirements out there, militaries have increasingly joined the fray. So militaries have been a part of space for decades, but now this time they're there to protect the commercial infrastructure as well as everything else. And you're seeing a dance between militaries that are further driving the need for commercial infrastructure in space. And we can go into that if you wish.
Okay, a quick follow-up question then. You've just spoken about Johnson & Johnson and given us an example about that. You are talking about how the best medicines will actually be made in space as and when. We don't know
super
when.
Drugs. Super drugs.
Okay, super drugs.
Yeah.
So what we will get from space is super drugs, and that will happen sooner rather than later. I want to ask you then, in that context, what are companies like Johnson & Johnson doing with that knowledge? Are they actively looking at building infrastructure, say, on Mars? Or are they simply sitting and watching and letting other people take lead? And what about... and we are talking about these big companies that are launching rockets, right? We are talking about Blue Origin, we are talking about SpaceX, but I'm sure these are not the only two companies that can drive growth around the space industry. Who else is driving this growth?
Yeah, that's a great question, because SpaceX, what SpaceX has solved is one of the core logistical hurdles. How do you, knowing that there's value there, what is the blocker? And it's how quickly and how much volume can you move material up and down. So what SpaceX did is they said, we're going to make a rocket which is able to take lots of material up as cheaply as we can. And that's really the value of that. But sorry, the question again was? I
want to ask you, when startups are looking at the space industry right now, is it is it an open door or is it a gated community?
It's both. It's both. All right. So space is a monopolistic industry by its nature. Okay. So you've always had very large companies, big primes. From every country's got their own prime that likes to control the cash flow and make sure that new companies enter the game. And so a smaller business, a startup or an SME, their goal is to make something disruptive, just like the automotive industry, for example, just like the mining industry, for example. Mining is a good parallel to the space industry. An entry-level mine site in Australia will cost $250 million. So what do? You go to a VC, said, here's where the gold is, here's how much we need, and here's how much money we're going to make at the end of it. We'll make you $2.5 billion, here's your return. They have to convince them. Exactly the same for space. And it's a lot of companies these days are looking at manufacturing satellites that can maneuver quickly. That's the defense need. Okay, every defense right now is, every prime nation is looking at spacecraft which can maneuver and dogfight, because of the geopolitical tensions. The moment you have the requirement to that means you need to spend a lot of fuel. So now you got companies that are doing fuel depots in space, the first ones of those, and now you have the need to do mining of near areas. We're not talking about Mars bases, but now moon base starts to make sense. Now asteroid mining starts to make sense because there's trillions of dollars in material. The only reason why it hasn't happened yet is because that kind of commercial need hasn't driven it.
Can I ask you, what are the big impediments? When you see us becoming an interplanetary species, does it happen in our lifetimes? And right now, what are the big roadblocks? Fuel, you've spoken about fuel as a big roadblock, but I would imagine something as basic as oxygen would be a big roadblock as well, or no?
Oh, absolutely. Oxygen, water, food, these are all logistics problems. I would see this as a program rather than a project, because a lot of people will visualize a moon base and a Mars base and say, aha, it's not possible, we can't do. What's going to happen in practice is a gradual march towards that future because of what people want to have, is they want to have business in space and leverage the value of space. We have seen over the last 20 years a occupation of the area around Earth called low Earth orbit. That's all the small satellites, and now it's a saturated area. Now satellites are having a hard time not colliding with each other. That's why you need space traffic. And we're seeing the same thing in further out, what they call the geosynchronous belt. That's where all the government satellites tend to be, and your major telecommunication satellites, and that's starting to get busy as well. So now you're starting to see companies that are just beginning. Manufacturing on orbit to leverage some of these capabilities that we're talking about. And I've seen the first 6 companies that are trying to tackle the problem of bringing stuff down to Earth. So SpaceX, solving the problem of getting things up there. Now we're saying bringing stuff down. So how do we get to that, to a base on the moon? Well, like I said, you have needs for fuel and material. Where's this material going to come from? So now you're talking about setting up a mining site or a research base out there. That's where the Artemis Accords comes in. By the way, it's interesting. Artemis Accords, normally a U.S.-led program like that, you would say it's going to die the next time a new president comes in. It's managed to survive Republicans and Democrats over the years. This is why.
India is part of it, and which brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
So you have billionaires right now in space. You have governments in space, right? You have government-run agencies in space, and you have billionaires in the space business.
And venture capital.
And venture. But is this then, honestly, right now, just a rich boys club? And to democratize it eventually, well, it will happen eventually, but, in the long run, all of us are dead.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm a big fan of what I call the democratization of space, which means everyone from any part of this world can be a part of this industry that we love. And the challenge with space is not the fact that you got wealthy individuals and organizations, because let's face it, most of the $620 billion market, these days, a third of it is governments. Only a third is governments. That's what makes it interesting. Most of the rest of that is actually investor-driven, okay, which would be a mix of companies that invest in Elon and in Jeff Bezos, and also companies like ours and hundreds of companies around the world. And every nation right now is setting up their space agency, like Singapore just last week announced a $200 million space agency. It's the same. So that democratization is happening. What we need to avoid is the natural intent for big business to monopolize and vendor lock and vertically integrate. And the only way to solve that is for governments to make, people who are the customers have to enforce the best products from the best supplier. That's the only way to do it.
Dr. Jason, the point is that, we have, of course, grown-ups in the audience, but we have young people who will probably be watching this broadcast on their television screens across India. These are young people who have seen someone like a Shubhanshu Shukla do a successful journey in space and come back. They have followed very closely the story of Sunita Williams, because she honestly represents global aspiration. This is a young lady with Indian origin, goes to America, American astronaut, global crew, etc., etc. But they are looking at all of it. And they are seeing reels go viral of landings and spacecrafts taking off and thinking to themselves, can we do this? Can we go to space as well? Realistically. What would your answer be to that question?
Sunita was one of my heroes too. That's I wanted to go to space. I never made it. I did get to fly in parabolic flights. So these are like aircraft that can simulate zero gravity for about 30 seconds at a time, floating around with my own products. You could definitely do that. The cost of that has been democratized to about the cost of a business class ticket these days. So you could experience that. One of the problems we've had as an industry, in the space industry, stems from our history of being this very kind of special thing, an elitist thing. We need to divorce ourselves from this. We put an astronaut on a pedestal, and when you get to know them, they're people like us. They got their own problems and lives and hopes and dreams, and they all retire and move to New Zealand to start a vineyard. It's kind of just like the rest of us. But the opportunity for young people these days is in entrepreneurialism for space, for sure. Flying in space yourself can happen in time, just like the moon base and the Mars base. It's the inevitable march of growth of the industry, and as more material is used, then you have more need for people up there to management, just like you need people down here to manage it. I must have trained over 350 young space engineers in Australia, which 10 years ago didn't even have a space agency. The demand is there, and if you're a young person, I would say get into it anyways, because you're going to, even if you don't make it to the moon, you're going to make it somewhere for sure.
There are people in this audience who perhaps have the money. I hope all of you have the money. Who have the money and are thinking to themselves, if space is such a great market where you're going to make super drugs and where all the minerals are going to come from, it could be from anywhere, what is it that I need to know? What is it that I need to know before I wade into this business? You already have done it.
And look, my company is unusual in that we didn't raise investment. We actually bootstrapped a space company. Can you believe it? Bootstrapped a space company. We're a little weird. You weren't cuddled by a prime or something like that. We didn't get investment. We built it from hard work and having a good product. For an investor in this room, what you need to know is you could divide the space industry into 3 different subsectors. You've got the rockets, you got the satellites, and you got the operations and the data within there. So when you're looking at pitch decks, it's just like you're looking at a pitch deck from any other industry that you've looked at. And I advise a lot of startups to not sell the sex appeal of the technology, get the investor motivated about the money you're going to make. And the opportunity is fantastic. There's no excuse for a company to say, we're going to Mars, but not telling you how to get there and how to capture the customer. The other thing you need to understand is the pace of a space industry startup or SME or growth is similar to what you would see in the mining sector. There's a lot of good crossover mining investors, because you hit that valley of death a few years in, you make a product, and then it takes a few more years to get that first customer, and then the snowball happens. So if you're looking to return your investment quickly, then the story is stages of investment, and that's how you do it. And it's
all right. My last question to you is an ethical one. I want to ask you, who gets to be in charge in space? Right now, you have 2 sets of people going there, right? You have government-backed astronauts, and you have the billionaire-led enterprises. And they've floated some ideas that are honestly civilizational ideas, which are great ideas, but the fate of humanity cannot be left in the hands of 3 billionaires or 4 governments. Who gets to be in charge?
I got good news and bad news for you. The bad news doesn't get better with age, right? The reality is people who have the resources are going to be part of what makes it happen. You do have regulations in space that are reasonably robust that set how people behave. Nation states these days aren't necessarily following the rules that they've agreed to over the last decades, which is part of the problem. But the thing is, I don't see an ethical issue with that. Okay. The good news is, as this grows, because it's still very dynamic, there's still room for collaboration and cooperation in space, especially things like space traffic management. Things are flying. There is no jurisdictional that one nation owns space. It's physically impossible. And if satellites collide, it creates a debris field that risks themselves as well as their adversary potentially. So there's a natural incentive for collaboration that we need to kind of build on as part of our growth.
Dr. Hild, we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a learning curve for me. Thank you so much.
Absolute
and good
pleasure.
to have you here.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.